guys, welcome to another installment of Rick the Grease Man and the literal Bob Lazar. Now, this is not the intended video I was going to do. I was going to do a video and talk about the technology that Bob Lazar describes in his brief time at S4, and going back and looking at some of your comments, some stuff has stuck in my mind, and I think, I'm going to just have a video on that. And in part, yes. @Lurker says, I would like to believe Bob Lazar's story. And I agree with you, Lurker. I really do. I want to believe his story, too, for a number of reasons, other than just the very fact that it gives me faith and hope that there's something bigger and better and grander out there that doesn't involve a religion. That potentially, if we manage to keep electing more Trumps and wiping ourselves off the face of the earth from a number of other things to get a grip on our many, many, many issues, that perhaps someday, one day, we will be the aliens visiting faraway planets and watching another culture evolve and hopefully succeed. So that's when I said at the very beginning that I'm looking at this as a literal opinion. What if Bob Lazar literally is telling the truth? What if his story is true? That's more or less what the videos are about. Once again, I'm not championing Bob Lazar specifically or trying to change your mind on the story. But one of the common themes in many, many, many videos and comments among the below those videos on the Bob Lazar subject is the comments that his story changes, or he adds things or leaves things out, or isn't consistent from exactly video to video, interview to interview. And I would like to point out that, technically speaking, unless you have a written script in front of you and you keep to you keep to that specific script, and you memorize that perfect script, then at no time can you deviate from the script. Otherwise, it seems like you're either lying, or you're not telling all of the facts, or you're leaving out stuff. You're purposely being obtuse, etc., etc. Now, Bob Lazar is a literal man. He is a human being who is not infallible. He can make mistakes. He can lie, he can ad-lib, he can embellish, just like anybody else. And I look at that from a literal perspective. I started doing, I applaud you guys for viewing my videos, even if you're briefly just clicking in to go, what the fuck's this crap? But, fact is, I've only gotten 2 subscribers to the channel. That goes to tell you, I don't care about fame or popularity or statistics or whether or not I got a bunch of followers. It's not about that. It's about talking about a very interesting subject. The what if factor, the literal factor, as if the man says what he says, is true from his viewpoint. It's true from a certain point of view, to quote Star Wars. So when, @Lurker, when you say, I want to believe, I do believe you want to believe me. And it's hard to not pick apart a man's story. We do this as human beings every day. Growing up, there was always that kid. If you were not that kid, there was a kid in your class who liked to embellish things. His personal life was so miserable or so boring or so bland that he made up stuff. Really good liars or really good storytellers can be consistent. But the lion's share of us, our stories change. We forget things, we add things, we leave things, we purposely leave things out, we try to steer away from certain subjects we don't really want to keep rehashing, and so on and so forth. It's just like the most glaring gorilla in Bob Lazar's room is this lack of education, his claim to have higher advanced education degrees, and yet this inability to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. We will never know if the literal truth is that the government actually tried to eliminate those those degrees. And you can sit there and say, well, there were people when he went to school with that would have known. Well, there are people who he went to school with who would have known. Now, I went to college and I attended numerous classes, and I cannot tell you the name of one person that I went to school with. And this was back in 2000. So this was 20 years ago. I can vision the rooms. I can describe them to you to some degree. I can describe the location in the campus where they were at the time. I cannot even tell you who my instructor. I had several instructors, and I cannot tell you who they were, who the professors were, at all. I would have to go and look up my academia material for this information. Now, that said, in 20 years, I have moved. I have changed locations. Much of my stuff went into storage, long-term storage, while my wife and I were looking for a house and living out of our 30-year-old RV, and which is homeless in case you don't get the drift there, that I wasn't flush and we weren't traveling the country seeing things. We were hanging on by our toenails and praying that we could get enough money together to get ourselves someplace stable, which we eventually did through hard work and a lot of effort. But in the process, a lot of that academic material I had from my college days is gone. Does that mean I didn't go to school? Well, no, because you can contact the area community college where I got my 2.5-year, 3-year degree to see if I went, and they're probably going to tell you. That's because the government or some other entity didn't go in there and erase my name from the database. Now, do the professors remember Bob Lazar? Well, he said he fired off a couple names, and one of them is from a high school he attended to, one that can be verified. The ones at the universities cannot be verified. We're back to that. We can't prove that Bob Lazar's story is true. So obviously most of his story must be false because his education is dodgy. Fine, right? Okay. Literally speaking, so it's plausible, is it not? The government, especially back then when things were a lot less accountable for, still a hell of a lot of things are not accountable for today. And in the era of data breaches and erases and wipes, it's much easier to lose information now than it was then, because then it was printed material. But keep in mind that for all the years you went to high school, all your let's say legal document academia material stuff went into a single file in a file cabinet. So if somebody misplaced that file cabinet, your stuff would disappear. And they couldn't say 100% for sure. Oh, there'd be other things saying, oh, well, you were on this roll, or you have I have a whole pile. Well, I did have a pile of school yearbooks. Well, colleges don't put out yearbooks. At least they didn't in mine, and they didn't offer me one if they did. So I'm just saying. And then we talk about those people that are associated with it. Another comment on one of my channels was from Alex Tome. Alex Tome points out that Bob Lazar's wife went out with him and several friends to witness the strange lights in the sky above Area 51, and several times. He did this to try to reassure her that he wasn't out doing some chicanerous adulterous stuff like she was when he was getting called away to go work at this place he couldn't talk about. Now, is that a lie? Well, we don't know because Bob. Do any of you know who Bob Lazar's wife's name is? Did she do any videos that we know of? I have never come across any. I don't. My Google checks draw blanks. And there are other people. There was at least one person there that has done some videos and stuff. And he adamantly insists that he saw strange lights in the sky in the middle of the Nevada desert above Area 51, back when it wasn't vogue to go out and do these sort of looks and these sort of things. And he admits that they got in trouble, though he doesn't elaborate as to, Bob Lazar gets hauled over, dragged over the mat, according to Bob Lazar. But his buddies, we don't know that they got it's implied they got let go. We don't know that they got held in a room somewhere with people in black suits threatening them with guns and holes in the desert, because they never say that. And we never hear from the other person in the group. At least I have yet to cross a video or interview that third or fourth person did. But yet Bob Lazar has some evidence. He has some witnesses to the fact that his story has some truth to it. So, I would definitely like to, hear Bob Lazar's ex-wife's view on this sort of scenario and whether or not she actually believed what she saw, or she saw things she couldn't explain. She herself, we don't know the timeline for Bob Lazar's marriage. So was she married to him when he was going to college? Did she meet him at one of those universities? Did she know him from high school and then attended with him? She would know, but she wouldn't be able to give you any physical proof unless she herself attended one of those places. She could say, see, I attended here. I say he did. It's he said, she said things. What would be her advantage or disadvantage in now, having become his ex-wife, to back up any of his stories? Instead, just drops off the face of the earth because she doesn't want any part of the never-ending questions, the never-ending harassment because of who Bob Lazar is or was, and his claims, his stories. So, the literal truth is, I can relate to her in that aspect. I could see why Bob Lazar is reluctant, and I compared him to this Dr. Greer fellow, whose outlandish claims are based on kernels of truth. The man is a highly trained doctor with years of experience under his belt. Also some sort of yoga instructor with years of experience under his belt. He actually has been to the White House and has dressed former presidents about the, quote, UFO phenomenon or the UFO what have you. Funny that none of those presidents openly talk about him about, oh, well, I'm going to get to the bottom of the UFO thing, and then they talk to this guy and they just kind of grimace or grunt or change their mind and let it go. Because, no offense to Dr. Greer, his stories are so far outlandishly out there when you compare them to Bob Lazar that Bob Lazar becomes even more credible or more believable because he's such a he's not a sensationalist. He's not seeking fame or fortune. In a lot of cases, he just wishes the whole thing would go away, but he's an honest person who's not going to sit and wave his hand and go, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. And then, yeah, I said this and I made it up, or I did this and that. So his story changes. The details in his story changes. Sometimes he leaves things out. Sometimes he adds things. Sometimes he embellishes things. This is human nature, especially as we get older. And if you're young viewers listening to this and you're going to go, yeah, what do you know, man? Well, I'm telling you, when you get to my age, God damn it, you're going to, excuse my French. Oh, wait, that's not appropriate. Excuse my swearing. No, don't excuse it. This is public YouTube, and I can pretty much say what I want. This is not for young children, for God's sake. If you're a youth under 18, piss off. So what I'm getting at here, I guess, is I was creating another video of my story, the experiences I had working for 7-Eleven and convenience stores, specifically at 7-Eleven, because I have some events and incidents that occurred at other stores, not nearly as many and as colorful as that particular location, because that particular location is literally in the middle of a pretty hard-nosed area of the capital of Iowa, which by standards of Chicago and New York is pony play, but it's still considered, or was, the hood at the time. So there was a lot of nefarious and colorful and dangerous things going on, and there still is. It still goes on down there all the time. It's just a different convenience store. So I'm talking about this situation where these three young ladies, one in a wheelchair, comes into the store. And I'm not 100% sure. I know there was an off-duty officer because he was involved in apprehending the young ladies, specifically retrieving the alcohol from the ladies' fake pant legs, or her formerly empty pant legs. And I think, and this is where my story can change from me retelling this story, the facts of the story do not change. Three young women, one in a wheelchair, with no legs below the knees, come into the convenience store, spend 20 minutes back by the alcohol and liquor cabinets, and then proceed to leave. And where the lady had her pant legs rolled up when she came in, they were now extended fully and appeared to be stuffed with something as they left. Had they come to the counter, bought a pack of cigarettes or candy bar, I might never have noticed it. because I would have been less inclined to wonder what they were doing for 20 minutes and then leaving the store. And the story is also consistent in the aspect that I rap on the one-way glass or the see-through mirror glass, however you want to look at it, to get the cop's attention. He comes out. To this day, I cannot tell you the officer's name. I can't tell you the name of my coworkers at 7-Eleven. I can't tell you the name of the manager. I don't even remember his first name because that was a long time ago, and it just is what it is. I think he had several students from Drake University, which is a law university and a medicine university up the road from the convenience store. You can Google it. It's there. So is the location that I worked at, except now it is a come and go at that location. It's 22nd and University in the heart of a very downtrodden region of the town between the university and what passes for the hood. So they're there. Was those young men in back in cuffs because they were stealing sandwiches there or not on that incident? I honestly cannot tell you. I think they were there, but I also think they were there at another event where a riot takes place out in the parking lot. So, and yet, many different occasions during the 2 years that I worked there, young men and women came into the store, pilfered things. Some of them came from the Drake University students and had money in their pockets, and an off-duty officer hired as security, apprehended them, etc., etc. Is that consistent? Well, my story will change from telling to telling sometime. That doesn't make the story any less true, any less literal. It's just I get the events mixed up a little bit. Now, Bob Lazar, on the Bob Rogan show, acknowledges that happens sometimes to him as well, that he sometimes remembers things and doesn't remember things from retelling to retelling. In part, it has to do with the environment, the situation, his stress level, how tired he is, etc., etc. You know, he suffers from migraine headaches. Now, I don't know about you. I have had one migraine headache in my lifetime, and I thought I was going to die. I don't know how anybody can function with a full-on migraine, period. I thought somebody was trying to drive a 10-inch spike through my forehead, right through the temple. I was so sick to my stomach, so much pain. All I could do was lay on the floor and wait for it to pass. And I've never had another one since, so I don't know what brought it on. I don't remember. I know as a young man, I know my mother and my sister and her friend and her kids had all gone to the Iowa State Fair, and I got left behind because I don't remember. Either I was working a part-time job, I had something to do, or I just didn't want to go, or I was in trouble and I got left behind as a punishment. I can't remember. But the fact was, I had a migraine. It was horrible. I was on the floor of my mom and dad's house by myself, dealing with it. Straight up. It was so bad that I remember paging for my mom, calling the state fairgrounds, and having them page her to call home. And then all she told me to do was just lay there, put a bag of ice on my head, and deal with it. Right? So, is that the little truth? The damn straight it's the little truth. Can any of you prove that? No. Do I care if you can prove it? No. But this is the truth. We all have those moments. So, yeah, it's easy to sit there and say somebody, if Bob Lazar wasn't Bob Lazar and he was somebody else, would the story be any different? What makes his story so intriguing is Bob Lazar, the man, how literal he sounds, how matter of fact he talks about this stuff. The fact that 90% of the time, or even 80% of the time, he's consistently saying the same thing. And he doesn't embellish. He doesn't elaborate. He didn't get whisked off in a flying UFO flown by some midget in employment of some little person in the employment of the Air Force or some other government agency, nor did he get abducted by aliens or have conversations with them directly. He may or may not have seen a small figure at S4 who may or may not have been an alien, but he can't be 100% sure, and he isn't willing to try to elaborate or embellish the fact. Dr. Greer is a great person for telling some pretty fantastic stuff in great detail and fairly consistency from what I've been able to see so far. So, did Bob Lazar see an alien? We'll never know. Did Dr. Greer speak with aliens, summon them, as he claims, more than once? We will never know. Who more likely are you to, when you listen to their stories? Bob Lazar more believable than Dr. Greer. Dr. Greer got all those credentials Bob Lazar says he has and can't find. Dr. Greer has gobs and gobs and gobs of contacts in the government from one reason or another. Bob Lazar has none. Sounds more like a guy like Dr. Greer would be the type of person the government might want to hire for a secret project like S4. Except people like Dr. Greer are sensationalists. They're megalomaniacs. They're 100 other things that seek to get fame and fortune, seek to wow their audience, seek to make themselves higher up, put themselves on a pedestal. People like Bob Lazar don't do that. The character Bob Lazar's character is extremely more believable than a man like Dr. Greer's, in my personal opinion. Just saying, just my personal opinion. So, at Lurker, I do too want to believe Bob Lazar for a number of reasons. Just for the fact that we want to be vindicated. I want to know that when I know, statistically speaking, perhaps we can agree on this. Statistically speaking, in a galaxy with a million possible solar systems, with untold planets, that life absolutely positively does exist out there. Even if it's 1 in a million opportunities for it to thrive and to grow and to establish itself, it's there. Are there scores of interstellar intelligent life-bearing entity societies like we like to see in our sci-fi, in Star Trek and Star Wars, etc., etc., etc.? Or are we just, very rare gem? There's only a handful of super intelligent, super capable entities out there at this current time that exists in our time frame. Because not only we're dealing with the vastness of space, the sheer percentage and numbers of planets that are marginally habitable for humans could also be much more habitable for somebody who's suited to that environment. In addition to the time scale factor, the sheer age of the universe, that over the millions and millions and millions of years, that other intelligent societies have existed, have come to fruition, expanded, and then collapsed or went dead. Because humanity sure has its perchance. I sit here and I look at the things that are going on today in this country, and the fact that we have a lot of people in government, most of the people that we elected, seem to either be wringing their hands or sitting on them and yelling and screaming at each other and pointing fingers, and some want to do good works and some don't care. The majority, on the other hand, we never really hear from collectively. I hear the bullshit that coming out of the Iowa's elected officials and those ones that are running against them, but I don't hear the stuff from Kentucky very often. I don't hear the stuff from Omaha or Utah or even Nebraska or Illinois, which are our neighbors, because our local news don't go out of their way to cover that stuff. And I don't go out of my way to look it up on YouTube. I already look at too much stuff anyway that I probably shouldn't, because it gets really depressing. It's just like our handling of this pandemic, for Christ's sake. If this was a truly bad pandemic, this is a bad pandemic, true. But if this was a catastrophic one, where tens of thousands of people were dying daily and it wasn't getting better, our current government is so handicapped and so hamstrung with itself, so full of itself, so determined to pursue its particular goals to the expense of everybody and everything else. This in part is because the population of this state or this country has allowed this crap to get out of hand. So we go back to the original concept of the story, the literal truth, Bob Lazar's story, and how he portrays it as he gets older, as he remembers, is Are there holes in this story? Absolutely. There's some pretty deep and clear ones. Are there some questionable answers to some of those holes? You betcha. Are there some plausible reasons for those holes? Damn straight. Let's be honest. Let's be realistic. Look at our government now. No more at any point in American history has become so blatantly obvious at just how much the government lies, how much of it tries to blow smoke up our backsides, and how much it's gotten to the point where they don't even bother anymore. They don't even bother. They can sit there, the President of the United States can sit there on international television while you're watching it and tell you something, and then the next day absolutely swear to God he never said that it was construed wrong, or he was just joking. Man was not joking when he was talking about having people shoot freaking chemicals in their system to kill a virus. The man was not joking when he sat there and said the virus is going to miraculously go away. He didn't. Is just not capable of understanding this. And it's so blatant because I see it with my own eyes, hear it with my own ears. And millions of other people out there do as well. But there are millions of other people, and people I know personally, who hears a different thing when this man talks. It's not a lie. He never said that. They see the same thing sit there right next to me, and they see it, and then the next day they say, well, the president said it was taken out of context. So obviously the media faked it. Okay, how do you make an argument? How do you argue against that stuff? How do you argue about those holes in the story, or whether a person is outright lying? Man took numerous lie detector tests, and he passed it. The problem with lie detector tests, which they kind of half-assed tell you, is if you believe your story, if you believe in what you think, what you believe, you will pass with flying colors every time. If you're really good at twisting things so it doesn't sound like what you did was something wrong, and you truly believe what you're telling yourself, you will pass that lie detector test. So those lie detector tests in Bob Lazar's case is pointless because he believes what he believes. The reason we're here and listening to doing these videos and talking about this subject and out there Googling this stuff, you didn't come across this video by mistake. You were out here Googling Bob Lazar and wanted to know more or wanted to hear more just for the entertainment factor, or because a piece of you really wants to know that this is true. So what he says is true, or what he says isn't true. I am looking at the literal story. Now, we look at the literal man. Of course, everything's in doubt because he's fallible, he's human, he's capable of saying and doing a whole lot of things and then changing his mind or forgetting things over the years or retelling a story so much that it grows out. It's like a bad game of telephone where we pass a story around a circle, and by the time we get back to the original person, it is nothing close to what the original story was. Now think about that for a second. The very act of telephone, where we all sit in a circle and we start out with one person and we pass this message around and see how it transforms. Along the way, there's one or two or a handful of people who purposely change key elements of a story intentionally to disinform the next person because they're going to get a secret laugh or an open laugh at the end of the exercise, because they know that the original story was diluted or distorted because they secretly said something off. Then there's going to be one or two or three people out of a group that's going to misconstrue what the other person said, and they're going to retell it so it makes sense in their head to the next person, which alters the original story again. And then there's a handful of people in this group, myself would be included in this, who can take in something and then try to retell it and leave something missing because it just didn't stick in my brain at the time. And then later, after I've had time, if the circle had gone around 2 or 3 times of the same story, I had to start going, oh, wait a minute, that's not what you said the last time. This is what I remember. So then we try to return the story to its original contents, further distorting the story as it goes. Isn't that a conundrum in itself? So, Atlerker and Alex Tome absolutely, positively would like to believe in this man. Would definitely like to hear his wife's story and her take on this stuff, especially nowadays. This year, as many years later, what has she got to lose? Is she going to, get some kind of revenge on because she's angry with him? We'll never know. Right? Well, like I said, this was not, my original intent was to do a video on the technology itself, so I will try to do that next weekend. Next weekend is the 4th, so I might not be available to do it until the following weekend. I know that at work I got a couple slow weeks coming, so we'll see how these things pan out. It is summer. That's why if I go 2 weeks between videos, it's because, hey, the real world has its agenda as well, and things that need to get in place. So, until next time, this is Rick.